We're in the midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am super excited to welcome two guests on our interview series today, Matt Auron, the Managing Director at Evolution, and Stuart McCalla, Managing Partner at Evolution. Matt, Stuart, thank you so much for being here. If you want to both share a little bit about yourselves, including both of your pronouns, and do you remember when you were younger, how you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Wow, that's such a detailed question. You want to go ahead, Matt?
Go ahead, Stuart. Yeah, you can start.
Okay. I'm so caught by what do I want to be when I grow up, because in a lot of ways I don't know if I have grown up and if I know what I want to be yet. But so I'll just say my name is Stuart McCalla. I'm a managing partner of Evolution. We're a high growth coaching firm that works with primarily startups, large tech companies. Tech seems to be our central area of expertise, but we work with a lot of other organizations as well too. I've been coaching for a long time. I don't want to date myself, but I've been around the block a couple of times. And what I'm super excited about is really coaching organizations to be the best of who they want to be, both at the leadership level as well as the organizational level, right? So not just the individual, but also the collective. And so then the question, what do I want to be when I grow up? Well, I'm a sci-fi buff, so I think I want to be the $6 Million Man. So if I don't remember that show where you had to run slow to pretend you were running fast. And I remember actually doing that as a kid, like, I'm running really fast. Oh, really? But I think that was just an indication of my fascination with technology and human potential. So yeah, I think if I were to think about it, that was one of the defining shows that I really wanted to emulate.
Yeah, great. Matt Auron. I've been a coach for about 15 years, co-founded Evolution about 10 years ago with my partner, Jeff Graber. I've been a lobbyist. I played in a band that toured regionally, actually played on the band's Warped Tour. I run workshops, personal development workshops for men, specifically on toxic masculinity and men healing. And I've been coaching and doing organizational development for about 15 years. And both Stuart and I, everybody at Evolution, which is now, almost 60 people, it's grown to 150 clients. We're all passionate about business as a transformational agent of change in the world, and how organizations can have a positive impact and people inside of them. People do most of their personal growth at work. And so we really, really love what we do. It's a bunch of our life's work. So part of the answer as an adult is probably we're doing it. My answer as a kid, I think I wanted to be a doctor. But I also, for a while, which is worrisome to everybody around me, wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And it was really more about the jumping out of planes and scuba diving and going to kind of adventurous things as kind of a young man. And so I was actually quite close in my late teen years to doing that and going on that road. But here I am now, an executive coach and a facilitator. So.
Right.
There we go.
I also want to point out that you actually asked us to say our gender pronouns. So mine are
yes.
he, him.
He, him.
Yeah, I definitely think it's always interesting to think about where we thought we would be 10, 20 years down the line and kind of what our influence was from a foundational level too. Fast forward to today, you both talked a little bit about kind of your why for Evolution, and folks who are hearing about Evolution for the first time in terms of hyper growth and coaching. Can you tell me a little bit about the vision you see for Evolution?
Yeah, maybe I can kind of take that one first. Evolution was founded in humble roots. It was never planned to be something as large as 150 clients and 40 plus partners and staff and all over the world. But what we figured out is that it's this dual-sided platform where we have clients on one side and then the other side, coaches who have no reason to make their home anywhere else. Coaches can have a real simple life. They don't even need a website. And we create a community of practice where we're doing our own personal growth. We're meeting twice a year for these super intensive retreat, like all hands. And really, the goal is to grow it as an organizational community, as a new form of a business. It's very flat, it's very self-organized, but it is a firm. It's not just a subcontracting firm like a lot of executive coaching firms. And the longer we get, so the vision is to be global and to be a model for how a business could be run in an evolutionary way. And to have a distinctive point of view on business as a force for good, about personal development in business, stakeholder focused business, we call evolutionary business. And, we wear that kind of on our sleeve. And so one of the ways we're a little different is we're very experimental, and part of our kind of adventurous spirit is we're just taking the next step. And, we now have a venture capital arm where we're doing direct investment into many of our clients as well. And that's another kind of phenomenological thing where we're walking this path, and evolution is growing as really a social experiment in what an organization can be. So.
I mean, I really appreciate what you're saying, Matt. And I think one of the things that I've always appreciated about evolution is that it adapts to what is the problems facing businesses right now. And as we currently see in 2020, after the rise of the pandemic, there was so much around people struggling about who they were, their identity. I'm an office worker. I go into the office and then I come home, and there's two distinct things, and that changed. And I think a lot of times coaching companies were really following the same process and how to coach somebody. And we actually tried, well, what are the ways that we can actually integrate home and life and actually have conversations? Remember, a lot of the times we would do our Zoom calls, and everybody was doing Zoom calls, right? Zoom client meetings, and somebody's kid would come zipping by the Zoom meeting. We're like, it's okay, it's all right to have your child, show up, and people are like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, that's the way. We're basically in your house, so having a lot of ability to roll with what's happening culturally, and then integrate it and reflect it back is, I think, also one of the powers of evolution, especially as we're talking about social change. Who you are as a business, how do you want to be a force for good in business?
I definitely think that employers and businesses have a huge responsibility to be a force for good because of the amount of folks that you reach, both employees and anyone who interacts with your employer brand. And a key ingredient to that is asking yourselves internal questions, thinking about your personal growth, having a growth mindset. And I think, to be empowered to do the work that you do and ask those questions, you need to be in a company culture that is really intentional and that it's set the stage by the company too. In these kind of managing director and managing partner roles, when you think about keeping a pulse on what's happening, being agile, iterating, what are qualitative and quantitative ways we can really measure this, dynamic thing of company culture from your perspective?
So one of the things about evolution is very experimental, and we have a point of view on business and stakeholder-based business and human consciousness and evolution. Business is an evolutionary force. We also, in a very profane way, work with primarily venture-backed growth stage businesses where they're doing management training. We're working with people one-on-one doing 360s, and then yes, we're helping them articulate who they are culturally. And so one of our perspectives is, and we apply this to us as well, is that culture really is an oral tradition. It's a qualitative narrative storytelling based thing where, the group of people are active in conversation about who they are, right? That's where kind of you can use this anthropological lens. And so the measurement for how it's going, of course, you can do engagement surveys, and we have one of our own where we kind of do an annual survey of like, how's it going? And there's quantitative scales on that and everything else. But from time to time, circling up and saying, who are we? Where are we going? And with whom? And essentially answering those questions, and how are you feeling, and checking in at a level of depth. Like we check in as a business at a level of depth at least once a month. And that is the how you doing and how are we doing. And sometimes we have big, more structured check-ins around kind of how we're doing. And we listen and we aggregate those themes into things that we can take action on. And our belief is the way you kind of measure culture is you use appreciative inquiry. You inquire into the positive core of what an organization is. That every organization has like an identity, has a soul, like releasing Michelangelo from the marble. And it's articulated in the external as the brand and internal as the culture. And the brand and the culture are two parts of what we call organizational essence. And it is why different groups of people, different organizations, different communities feel different, because they have this real subtle texture, and their symbols and their rituals and who they are is different. And you extract that from storytelling, best of moments, iconic figures, what's distinctive and unique about a business or an organization or a community. And then you can memorialize that into constructs that help guide behavior, mindsets or symbols that allow you to, create a certain process that is a mechanism that reinforces the organizational essence. And so really that's our belief on culture. It's what we help with our clients. And we have a culture guide. It's this big, long slide deck now that essentially tells the story of evolution and what we hold as sacred. And we are revising it, and we look at it, and we talk about it constantly as kind of our sacred text.
And I love what you're saying, Matt, which is that culture is something that's crafted, intentional, but is not numbers driven. What are the 12 things that we're doing right about our culture? Like, it's not something that we measure. It really is in connection and relationship that you build that story. And you can see it, I mean, especially when we work with organizations, and you walk into a room and you can pretty much guess certain things about that culture right away just by sensing it, right? Okay, it's a quiet organization, or it's a boisterous organization, or some of the companies I worked in, the developers are drinking at noon. That's not a good thing. Like, that's not the culture we wanted to enhance, right? We want to dampen that, actually. And so there are ways that you can do that, but it does require a relationship, and not I do something and expect a linear result. It's really this conversation that happens.
Yeah, continuous conversation and really active listening, and really demonstrating that you're actively listening as things continue to change externally and internally. I think there's been a lot of conversations around, company culture, the identity, the soul of an organization. Is it a top-down approach, a bottom-up approach? It's everybody's responsibility. But I think at the end of the day, when a CEO walks into a room or your manager walks into the room, you have to build that trust, and it's continued to be built over time. And of course, everybody has a role to play in company culture, but leaders sign up to be in leadership positions. What is the unique role of C-level executives to really be culture carriers in your mind?
Well, I mean, I can take a shot at that. So, C-level leaders really do drive the direction of any organization, and they can amplify or dampen anything within the culture. And so I would ask most senior leaders to really think about, what do you agree with, what do you pay attention to, and what do you want to see happen with the organization? And does everybody else know that about you? That idea of like continue to have conversations. We've seen leaders where they've driven organizations down based on their belief, and it becomes a very, what that leader believes in propagates throughout the entire organization, and people start fighting with each other, or they're not truthful. I mean, the Enron scandal is certainly sort of one of the big things that people think about as far as toxic leadership, right? And so it is both. Like, a leader can't do everything themselves, right? So it's not just that leader's responsibility for culture. It does require everybody enrolling in the vision and then crafting the culture that they want, and really amplifying the best and dampening the worst of whatever's happening within that organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to be cynical about, because I think you do have to have this belief that it's worth investing in. I worked at a company called DaVita, and they invested millions of dollars and really believed in it. It added to the performance of the organization, but there's more examples of it being bad, and people just being like, essentially the quote, "Be quiet and do your work," or, that kind of view. But it's really rich when it's done well. And that's where we see these kind of alumni companies that are kind of iconic, that are talent farms, right? They invest in who they are and their processes. And I think, like, to answer the question directly about leaders, when we do culture work, there's this whole bloom of things that levers you can pull: internal communications, internal brand, training, how processes are designed, especially people processes like hiring rubrics and onboarding. But all of that is eclipsed by a leader who is not aligned with the culture. And if they're not walking their talk in saying, like, and showing up and reinforcing it just, like, none of it matters. when they are, the rest of those things that I just talked about supercharge it and create all sorts of reinforcing mechanisms. But that's why at the top is how a leader shows up. It's a lot like being a parent, in that they're watching you and all of the subtle, facial expressions and tones, and what you say and what you don't say is like just as important. And so when we teach leadership, when we coach people, we talk about how they're showing up a lot in the symbolic way, because that's a part of leadership, especially at scale.
Yeah, people are paying attention to the verbal and nonverbal cues. If you say that you value transparency, but there's not, a lot of open communication going on, or you're open to feedback, but you don't really ask for feedback or build that into one-on-ones, there's not alignment there as well.
Yep.
To think about a leader aligned to the culture, aligned to the North Star, the values, really contributing to and motivating their team. I want to ask kind of how you think about holding yourselves accountable to be really great leaders, and how we should really think about measuring the effectiveness of specifically people leaders who are really helping individual contributors and everybody really move the mission forward of an organization, whether it is that storytelling, that qualitative, kind of asking yourselves those questions there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take this one first, Stuart. I think I always say at Evolution, by the time we make a decision at the top, it is informed by rings of feedback. We have a council of partners called the Partner Council that then run sub teams or lead sub teams. They each have a little team of partners. So every partner has a representative democracy kind of person that they can give feedback to, they can get support from, they can funnel feedback through. Partner Council meets every 6 weeks, gives us feedback on how the business is running. We do an annual survey. Once a year at our all hands, we do a discussion around what should next year be about and let people whiteboard and give input. So I rarely feel like we're making an autocratic decision that is not heavily informed by multiple perspectives. And that's one of the ways that we kind of keep it safe. And, as leaders, we're really just stewards of the experience and of the business. That's all we are. We're not, and I think the danger is the isolation chamber that leaders get into, where they're not getting feedback, and people are DMing us in Slack all the time about how they feel, whether we want to hear it or not. And we've really created that open culture where people feel like they can speak up. But I think you have to have redundancies in terms of inputs and feedback, because there isn't a one and done, and it layers. And the more you have, the safer you are, and the more transparent and safe you can feel about the decisions that you make.
I mean, I'll also say one of the benefits of Evolution is that we're a group of senior master facilitators and coaches. And so people are giving us feedback pretty directly. And so we take a lot of it seriously. Now, we don't take every piece of feedback. Matt and I joke about this all the time, because we get inundated with feedback, especially when we make a decision. Let's do this. Oh, and all of a sudden, a lot of people are telling us things. But I trust the people that are giving me the feedback, if that makes sense. And that's a very different thing than a lot of organizations. I trust that the people that are giving feedback are doing their own work, what's mine and what is mine to offer or mine to give. And then I want to give this feedback, and how do I give it so that this person can hear it? And so because we hold each other with that kind of rigor, I think getting feedback, especially at the leadership level within Evolution, is a lot less charged than it would be in sort of a typical software company, for example, or a tech company.
Yeah, there's trust and intention built into why you're giving feedback in the first place.
That's right.
We've talked about this a lot throughout the conversation, so probably should have asked a little bit earlier, but big on really making sure that we have the same kind of definitions for terms here as well. Can you really define coaching for our audience, and how you've seen really successful executives lean into coaching and having that growth mindset in their careers?
Yeah, coaching is a form of support that helps a person maximize their current role and level up to their next. That supports the person not only achieving what their goals are and organizational goals are, but deepen and develop capacity as a learner in it. Coaching includes the past. So sometimes we do talk about people's history and where they came from and their family of origin. But it's not therapy, which dwells more or less constantly in the past. It also includes where they're going, but it's also not planning, right? It's a very present moment that includes the future and past to help kind of shape a process where we are the safe harbor for that person, where they can be radically honest in a non-judgmental space. And we are asking questions, mirroring back their what's happening with them. And at times, which is a bit countercultural, having an opinion and giving feedback. And so we do that as a way to maximize a leader's role. And leaders, especially in startups, go through these stages. And we just wrote an article in Entrepreneur where the leadership competencies at each stage are different, and it happens fast and it's intense and is a mechanism now. And there's tons of you go out there and just like find the research and as a best practice, and it is like at the top of the list in terms of what a senior leader can do, and any leader really, to help maximize their learning and get them to the next level. So
I had a client that went from a senior manager to a VP within 4 years. And to what Matt was saying, every stage was different for this person. And I think what was powerful for him, and I think really shows the benefit of coaching, is it's me and him looking at his desires, wants, or where he wants to progress. But we're not looking at it from across the table. We're on the same side, like almost whiteboarding and architecting his life. And it really supported him in that rapid growth, because every time he kept saying, wow, I've really hit this next level, I'm stuck here. I'm like, I don't think so. I think you're on for the next ride. Of course, in tech, there's these rapid growth for a lot of companies, and so this person happened to catch the right wave. But at each level, he had to think about, what's it like being a senior manager? It's different than being a director, than being a senior director or a VP. And every one of those required a new level of understanding and an awareness of the complexity around him.
yeah.
And so that coaching really helped him go, oh, okay, this is this new thing. What made me successful to get to this point is not going to make me successful to get to the next point. So I have to learn something new.
Exactly. You can't continue to do the same thing and expect the
That's
same
right.
result, especially in different jobs, different teams, different
That's
points
right.
of the company as well. And having someone on your side as well, to your point, Stuart, is important throughout that kind of support system, as well as you continue to level up too, and really prevent the kind of isolation you may feel too as a leader. I've been asking really specific questions around evolution and just kind of what you've been seeing work really well with leaders as well. Is there anything that I didn't specifically ask either of you that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscore any kind of key takeaways you hope people bring with them? I'll pass the mic back to both of you.
Stuart, maybe we could, or you could just talk a little bit about, kind of shadow and other cultural perspectives. I mean, for sure, our perspective is figure out who you are, what your essence is, and then build mechanisms, including aligning leader behavior around that. That is how you scale without losing your soul, right? And it's done through storytelling and inquiry and building a culture guide and then designing process around that. But there's other things to attend to as well in culture. And Stuart, I don't know if you want to hit that a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing right now in society is that society influences over an organization's culture. And so let's be cognizant, aware, and ready for that. And so in any culture story, we have to talk about systemic oppression. I mean, it's in the conversation in the world. It's in the conversation in our companies. So let's have a point of view. I think also it's really important for organizations to not pretend that they care about something when they don't, because that creates huge rifts within organizations and it causes a lot of upset. But I think just bringing in, how do we talk about the current role of politics, of ideology, left versus right, democracy? I mean, all those things people are talking about, and it is actually helpful to have people progress developmentally by paying attention to those things. And that's actually part of a culture piece as well too, right? So culture is never static. It's always growing, it's always changing, and you're tending it. So let's make sure and be aware of all these external effects that come into our culture.
Yeah, it's important to not compartmentalize that and think that you're siloing these things out. We're experiencing the world together along with our jobs and, our lives inside and outside of work.
I've always loved when people have said, oh, that's outside. in here we're like this, outside is, and I'm like, no, there's no way you can have that kind of compartmentalization.
Yeah, there's no way. And I don't think, to your point too, it's not as healthy to think about that as well if you just like check your personality and also what your lived experience at the door.
That's right.
And you're not talking about, how you're feeling, because it is affecting you too. I think it's Brene Brown who says if you're in an argument, especially, it's not just two people in the room, it's you and everyone you've ever had a similar argument with, or all of
That's
your
right.
experience. So definitely. Yeah.
I've always loved the some proverb, I can't remember where I heard it from, but where you go up to two people and say, "Is this a private fight or can I join?" So really, especially when those conversations are happening, jump in and like have a conversation. You might shift something within people's minds.
Absolutely. Have a conversation. Matt, I love what you said about kind of scaling without losing your soul too. Really thinking about the dynamic company culture. Really appreciate you both taking the time to be on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks a lot. It's been great to be here.
Really appreciate it.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks.